A young woman sold into slavery rises above the ranks to take control of India's most notorious brothel, while also stopping to get in 5 musical sequences along the way. Get ready to pet the dog and screw in the light bulb as we review Gangubai Kathiawadi right here on Esoterica Cinema. Hello, peoples, and welcome to Esoterica Cinema, the program where we take films from the cinematic multiverse and discuss the hell out of them. My name is Jason Peters, and with me, as always, is the man who moonlights as a taxi driver for the Kentucky Bluegrass Mafia. Yes, it's him, Mr. Ryan Siebold.
Damn right, it's me. What's up, Jason? How's it going, buddy?
Good. I also like that Kentucky Bluegrass Mafia could totally be a band or the actual, Southern Kentucky Mafia. Who's to say? Maybe it's even both.
None of your business. Mind your business. Real quick, I got to ask you you mentioned something about screwing in a light bulb and petting a dog. What's that about?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, for everybody watching, so my cousin married an Indian gentleman, it's probably 10, 12, 15 years ago at this point. And they had a very large traditional wedding up in San Francisco that we were invited to, obviously, as a family. And so I'm a guy who likes to get on the dance floor in a wedding. A lot of the family members, the extended family of my cousins, my now cousin was also on the dance floor. And so I'm getting to know a lot of these Indian men and women. And there's a lot of traditional Indian music, and I've never really danced to traditional Indian music. And so as I was out there just kind of trying to, flail my arms and legs and figure things out, a couple of them were very nice and came up to me and they're like, hey, we see you trying out there. We're going to let you in on a little secret. Okay. When it comes to Indian music, there's only one move you need to know. And it's a move you can use for the entire song, for all the songs on the dance floor. It goes like this. You take one hand and you pet the dog. And then you take the other hand and you screw in the light bulb. And then if you do it with a nice smile on your face, you get a nice little move like this.
That's fantastic.
Now, Ryan, I'm over here doing this. I got to see you do it. Pet the dog with the one down.
That is very much a rub your tummy, pat your head kind of scenario. But I think it's, I can't see what you're doing, but I think it's, little something like that, maybe.
All right.
Just a little.
Cool. Yeah. I'm going to assume you did it as well, too. We can see in our mind's eye. It looks really good.
Yeah.
And then, maybe you switch it up. Oh, wow. Look at that. So, sorry, guys. This entire review is just me and Ryan doing this move the entire time.
How many idiots does it take to screw in a light bulb? Let's find out right here on Esoterica Cinema.
Just two, as we discuss today's film. That is Gangubai Kathiawadi. Ryan, do you have a description for us, sir?
I do. From 2022, this is Gangubai Kathiawadi, directed by Sanjay Leela Bhansali. Google has this described as: young Ganga is tricked by her boyfriend with the promise of a film career and persuaded to leave the countryside for Mumbai. In Mumbai, her dreams of a film career come crashing down. Boy, do they ever. And she is lured to the underworld. Pretty basic little description for a crazy movie. This was made on a budget of $12 million and brought in a box office of $26 million US dollars. This was the 5th highest grossing Hindi film of 2022. Director Sanjay Leela Bhansali is a pretty respectable director over there in India. For all our Indian viewers watching, we're going to do our utmost and give this the best respect we can. But the average disclaimer we like to give on this show is that we are American idiots, to quote Green Day. So we're going to do our best with some of these names. If I mispronounce any of these names, it is of utmost respect I have for everyone involved in this picture. No disrespect. We're going to do our absolute best. We're learning here. We're trying to grow. This is the second Indian film that we've covered on this program. We are really enjoying taking a deep dive into Indian cinema, Bollywood, Tollywood, learning all the major players. It's a whole ass thing over there that we have just neglected over time, and shame on us. So just be patient with us. We're learning and growing here in Esoterica Cinema.
I'm feeling confident, man. I'm going to crush all of these names. Not one syllable is going to be incorrect.
Good luck.
I'm just going to go in with that solid American gusto that says we get everything right the first time.
Hey, man, nothing has ever gone wrong in the history of time from a solid American gusto, let me tell you. I will say this is our second Indian film, like I said, that we've covered on this program, and our second Alia Bhatt and Ajay Dev film that we've covered on this program. They were both in RRR. So it was
nice.
cool to see
Very
them
cool.
and have them back. They both did amazing jobs and suitable jobs for what they gave us in this. But Jason, enough about my facts and disclaimers. I got to ask you, as always, buddy, what did you think about this movie, my friend?
Ryan, going to be happy to tell you first, do want to ask our audience, please, sirs and ladies and gentlemen of all variety, like, subscribe our video and channel. We appreciate it. And then be sure to leave comments along the way. We'd really love to hear what you have to say about this film. We'd like to get back to a lot of our audience. So yes, please chime in. Let us know what you think in response to some of the things that we are saying. So Ryan, I'm going to admit, I found this movie to be like, okay-ish.
Okay.
Good-ish, okay for sure. I was disappointed in it, I will admit, because this is probably unfair when like RRR is your first intro to Indian cinema, right? And you're like, oh, they all must be this grandiose. And they're like, not, bro, dude, this is the most expensive film we've ever made.
Sure.
But it was an incredibly uneven experience in the way that I viewed it. And it was good at times, it was bad at times, it was somewhere in the middle at other times, but there was this incredible sort of like lack of thematic cohesion through it that I just had a really hard time with. And I'm going to elaborate on that over the course of this review and let you all know exactly what I mean by that. So a couple things off of the bat, right? So first and foremost, we in the West are going to approach this subject matter like very different, right? Like this is something that like Paul Schrader would do, and it would be like a serious expose, and it would be gritty, and it would be real, and it would be uncomfortable. And I'm not necessarily saying that I need every experience to be uncomfortable or ultra realistic, right? But what I will say is that I believe the movie teed me up for that experience with that first 20, 30 minutes where it's like, we're seeing the girl and she's being sold into the ring and she's super young. And then Alia Bhatt's character, similar fate befalls her. The tone is very sort of like gritty and real. And we're seeing, people get slapped around and there's some blood and the guy's beating up on the thing. So it's like, it really comes out, pretty serious in those first 30 minutes. And then there's like a musical sequence. It's like, okay, well, that's like, maybe not what I would put into this type of film. And that's not, but okay, whatever, fine. Let's just get it out of the way. Maybe this thing. And then there's like another one 20 minutes later. And then there's this whole romance thing with the guy. I also had sort of an issue with when they introduce her character, it was kind of like she was like a female David Caruso, right? From, she comes in, she's like, all hammered, swigging on this bottle. She's wearing sunglasses inside, and she's like, look, girl, you don't know what the real thing is here. This is an ugly life. This is a hard life, blah, 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 this and that. And so I was I felt like I was being set up for like, we're going to take a more objective look at this, right? We're going to show you kind of the warts behind a lot of this,
Mm-hmm.
But then I feel like as the film went on, it became more about evangelizing her and her place in history.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm sure that she did a lot. I'm sure there was a lot of, fighting for women's rights. And, especially as somebody who, is supportive of sex work and doesn't have any sort of moral issue with that, like I'm totally in support of her plight. But also, like, we can't ignore the fact that this is a woman that engaged in sex trafficking amidst other trafficking and smuggling and all of this stuff. Right. And I was really hoping that I would have gotten more of like a let's see both sides of this woman. And I think even at the very end, if I remember correctly, there's literally a quote that says, Gangubai was no saint, but she also was not a devil.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really hoping for more of that experience. Like I would have loved to have seen like, hey, here's all the good stuff she did, but also, she profited off of women's bodies. She trafficked in alcohol, which is obviously a much bigger deal over there in India than it is out here, right? I think the scene where she gets hammered is supposed to be like a big deal for us. It's like, oh, that's just a Wednesday, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so there's just, and again, it's hard for me to know how much of this is cultural. I am also very familiar with and understand the nature of censorship in India and how there's a lot
Sure.
of material that can't be expressed in such a graphic manner. And
Hmm.
so there are literal roadblocks in place preventing that type of story from me. But like I said, it's just the fact that I felt like I was set up for that. And so if you're gonna tell me a gritty, raw, real story about someone sold into sex slavery and rising through the ranks, I have a hard time with you saying there's also going to be 5 musical sequences in there,
Right.
Because it just doesn't jive. So I know that's a lot to kind of throw out up top, but that was my high level response.
All right. I guess we're done here.
Hey, episode's over. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the movies. So, yeah, we'll go into the specifics behind all of that. But
Yeah.
how about you, Ryan?
Yeah, no, let me go ahead and open by saying you're not alone. I definitely understand your criticisms. And when I did a deep dive researching this film, I saw a lot of that, both from Western and Indian cultures. That
Interesting.
I guess, for starters, one of the main complaints is that exactly what you're saying, the Disneyfication or whitewashing of this criminal mastermind. I will say that the director apparently based this on a chapter in a book called The Mafia Queens of Mumbai, written by Hussein Zaidi, Hussein Zaidi, if I'm saying that right. So, this was a mafia queen. And so I would have liked to have seen more of the mafia side of it. They showed her interacting with Ajay Dev's character, who is a mob boss of sorts for the time, a criminal kingpin. He's kind of a mafia kingpin in a classic sense, in that he is doing things for the community. He's helping out small business, but he also has his hands in a lot of bad things and doing a lot of underworldly kind of things. And he rules with an iron fist to keep order and so forth. And so, but we just kind of tiptoe around that. We see little dribbles of it, and things that she's doing and stuff like that. But as we, like you said, it opens in a very dark spot to show the motivations for the character. And I thought that was done very well.
Agreed.
But then, once you anchor it in tragedy, then it starts to do this Cinderella / Moses kind of tale where, Gangubai is, just kind of a flawed character for sure. And I think Alia Bhatt's performance is fantastic. She was doing the best she could with what she was given. She did a great job of exuding an equal parts strength and vulnerability, and tragedy, a flawed hero, if you will. I thought she did a great job with that. You really did feel for her character. It's an emotional journey. And I thought that side of the movie was done impeccably. I would also bring to the table that, technically speaking, this movie is amazing.
Agreed. Yeah. Very
The
much so.
cinematography by Sudeep Chatterjee, if I'm saying that right, was so subtly perfect. Coming from RRR and the Bahubali saga that I've seen before, also by Rajamouli, was so hypersaturated and bright colors and just full of bombast and craziness and over the top cinematography. The drone shots and all this nonsense. And that's all very, very amazing. And just, eye bleeding, Michael Bay, James Cameron style, craziness going on. But this was so subtle in its colors and its tones, really focusing on mood more than, over substance with the colors and saturations, very subtle shifts from oranges to blues in your white balance. I always like to, it was really helpful that Gangubai was wearing a white sari, the dress she's wearing, because you could tell the white balance shifts and the mood shifts based on what tones her white sari is. Sometimes it's got a lot of blues in it. Sometimes it's got a lot of, oranges in it, which really evoked mood and then even just the symmetry of the cinematography as well. The deep space and vanishing points of the Mumbai red light district. that she was in. The set design, the way they created that town was amazing. We can get to that in a moment, but because that was all a set. The backdrop was all CGI to kind of fill it in the deep space, but the streets and everything were all real sets that they built true to life. This all took place in the 1950s, so they had to recreate a whole time and place in Mumbai, in an impoverished district, a red light district of Mumbai. But getting back to your point, once you leave that anchor of the tragedy, then it just kind of goes on this upward tale of how, though she was flawed emotionally and still dealing with her PTSD and trauma, which I thought they handled that even very well. They just never really got into the crime syndicate stuff, because to maintain that level of power and control over that area, I could only imagine, they show her doing, like you said, bootlegging and alcohol trafficking and drug trafficking, sex trade stuff, but it's all handled in this, oh, golly shucks kind of way, because, she's this Disney princess, at this point
all
in
the
the story.
prostitutes are like, thank you so much for letting us whore ourselves out for you, Gangubai.
Right,
we're so happy.
right.
And it's like, okay, really though? Like, I mean, I'm sure she made things better, but like, yeah, you're making it seem like this
But
is,
even when she's like paying off the cops and stuff, like the cops are like, we're going to get you. And it's all been kind of like almost ham-fisted, that we like to use that word a lot on this show. And then she's like, oh, I got something for you. And she gives them the money. And then they're like, don't do it again, little finger wag. I thought the tone shift in the film was awkward. Now, with that out of the way, I really did enjoy this movie. I thought also that Sanjay Leela Bhansali, the director, kind of covered his bases a little bit by the huge Encyclopedia Britannica style paragraph at the beginning of the film saying over and over again in very distinct detail, this is not a biopic. This is not meant to portray this literally. This is not the way this went. Like at all. Bold print. This is a fun movie, guys, and I'm going to make a fun movie and I'm going to pull at your heartstrings and we're going to go through it. But I'm going to take a lot of liberties along the way to kind of fill in the gaps. Sure. Also, I will add that it's my understanding not a lot is known about this character. Just kind of the cliff notes. Again, this was based on a chapter. The book itself, Mafia Queens of Mumbai, covers 13 women. So very little attention was given to this. This wasn't a book about her. It was a chapter about her that the director read and said that this is great fodder. I could base a movie around this and build this character up and do a hero's tale. But it's all, again, taking this conversation full circle, I'll throw it back to you. I've been talking for a while. It is my understanding that this is a frustrating part. And it's, I'll go a step further outside of my purview here. I'm going out on a limb by saying this, but upon my research, it's my understanding that even Indian culture gets frustrated by this Disneyfication of their own stories, that they wish they could get those Martin Scorsese, De Palma, Michael Mann, hard hitting, serious dramas, that kind of take these characters a little more serious and show them for who they are, like you say, warts and all, and kind of pull the rug up and show the roaches under there, because I think that this is half the movie. I think that what we saw was a great story. I thought that what we saw was a fun romp, a technically solid film, but it's missing about 25% or 30%. And if you would add that in, this movie would be like off the charts 5 stars for me. Like if it would have just had that too. Now, it's also not lost on me that this is a 2.5 hour movie. So you're really getting into 3 hour plus territory, but I think that you could have shown those things while you're showing other things. Like they gave us plenty where they could have just added that, and some of it could have even been done with tone, but so much attention was brought to Gangubai's trauma and her being a flawed hero or heroine, if you will. And, I think that some of those moments were, unfortunately left by the wayside and it was just a missed opportunity.
Yeah, well, and I think also it has to do with how you set things up. It's the same concept behind setting someone up for success or failure, right? It's like how you set the table kind of dictates what's to follow.
Sure.
So maybe if they had not started out so gritty and so realistic, and taken that first half an hour to set a similar tone
Yeah.
that more closely matched the second half of the film, and then incorporated some dark moments along the way. But I think just by starting out
It was so dark in the
consistently
beginning.
with those, exactly, yeah. So by doing
because you're
that,
dealing
again,
with
it's like
for those that
Yeah.
don't know, real quick, for me to interject, and I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt you, but it's important to tee this up because this is a very good point you're making, that you're dealing with like a small girl that, what would you say? She's probably like 13, 14-ish.
dude, I had her as young as like 7 or 8 or something. I think she's because
It's
I think
shockingly
later,
young.
when it's years later, she's like 15, but I think she's been there for a while at that point.
Yeah, I'm talking about the first girl that Gangubai comes in to talk to, that's chained to the floor or whatever.
Yeah, she gets
Call her 12. And, just prepubescent, very young, middle schooler. And she's sold into sex slavery. You see this, imposing dude walk in. You know what's about to happen. I mean, it's heartbreaking shit and very, very serious. And it's done all in shadow, and it's just so dark. She's chained to the floor. She's beaten. And then, Gangubai struts in and, like you said, like all dressed in white suit with the glasses and all of that, drunk, but comes in all powerful like a mob boss. So it tees up like, it's very, very fucking dark. And I didn't know, like, I was almost on the edge of like, what did I, because I think I watched it before you did. And I almost wanted to like text you and apologize, or text you and say, don't let your wife watch this. This is not a Debbie movie. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of tee it up like how dark it was. Because I think that's very important, how far that pendulum swings.
Yeah, I agree. And there's elements that I think could work if they were approached a certain way. So, I think that, to specifically discuss, it's this tonal inconsistency, that's really just kind of setting all of this up. And for example, like we've seen an example of dark musicals, right? Like whether they're, violent, like Sweeney Todd or something like that, or even just dramatically heavy the way I thought this maybe should have been handled, like with Les Miserables, for example, right? And so, you're not shying away from the darkness, the heaviness, the sadness, the emotions, all of that. But, the songs that you are singing within the context of this musical are reflective of that, both in their tonality and the lyrics and all of that. So,
sure,
perhaps if, some of the music had been, like when we watched RRR, for example, they've got the big, not your dance sequence and all of that. But then like there's that more somber song, like the ballady song that the one dude sings when he's getting whipped, right?
Right.
And so they could have done something like that. But all of the songs here, it's like, the super high energy dance sequence to introduce Gangubai. And then, there's this flirtatious song that she does with the guy. And then there's like another flirtatious one. And so it's like, again, like why, like it would have been nice to have some of those songs tonally reflect some of the darker material and keeping that balance, instead of just saying like, here's 5 really, gorgeous songs that in a vacuum are sweet, but then juxtaposed with a girl being sold into sex slavery. Like, how am I supposed to feel, bro? Like, let me know what we're doing over here.
Right. So to me, the filter that I have to run this through is that this is a movie about trauma, and this is not a gangster movie. This is not a sex trade movie. This is not a dark, crazy, like you said, Scorsese or De Palma movie or something like that. This is a trauma movie. It's a movie about a woman dealing with this, coming out of it, and butterflying herself out of the cocoon from the caterpillar that she was. And so, and making the best out of tragedy and learning to run this area with love and respect. Okay, I'll go down that road. But again, it is such a tonal shift that you're going to lose me along the way, at least for a minute, until I reposition myself. I think there are 2 good movies in here. They're just inconsistent with each other. I would have gone down the road with you for either one of them. I enjoyed both halves of this movie. I just think that both these, it's like one of these things just doesn't belong here.
Exactly.
So, and then, the romantic love interest scenes where she's singing to the tailor's nephew and stuff like that. That was all her dealing with her trauma, that she couldn't be touched. She had to be just held and she's learning how to come out of that and open herself up. And I think that, they're showing, there are parts of this that I could disagree with you on, or that I did appreciate from that standpoint. Sure. But man, you got to do a lot of, mental gymnastics. I'm going to have to throw out a lot of word salad to kind of justify these things. I will say that I did really enjoy this movie, probably more than you did, but I do understand your criticisms, and you're not alone. Because I've seen this a lot from both Western and Indian cultures.
Yeah, even I have to admit, even the final sequence, I did honestly find that kind of ham-fisted as well, And I think that's kind of
the final sequence is the worst.
Yeah, right. It seemed really forced. It was like, hey, here's the big emotional swelling. Go ahead and start crying. And I was like, no, I'm not ready to start crying. You're
talking about the parade sequence, right? Where she's going down the way, the drag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm somebody who actually cries relatively easy at films, for a dude or whatever you want to say, right? I tear up every time Uncle Ben dies, or the Indian pulls the water fountain up out of the floor, right? These things get me every damn time. So, yeah. But this came about and I was just like, I don't feel like you earned this. I know what you want from me right now, but I'm sorry, I cannot give it to you. Sure. And I just sat there with my chin up, looking away like a dog that doesn't want to eat its vegetables.
Did you pet the dog?
Only while I screwed in the light bulb, baby.
Fantastic. That's the deal. Just the curtain call roster of all the characters, and you were there, kind of the end of Wizard of Oz with Dorothy waking up out of bed. So, I thought that was a little ham-fisted as well. I see what they were going for, the big resolve and all of that. You just went on a journey with these people, very traumatic, some of the things they showed you. So they're just trying to tie up all these loose ends. But,
it's also, can I just interject real quick? I do think it's hysterical because, again, we've talked about this with people like Oliver Stone or Brian De Palma, right? Where they want to cram everything in their movie. They can't make a decision. So they're just going to do all of it. And so most films, it's hey, do you want to lead up to the big dramatic speech that she gives for 10 minutes and then gets the raucous applause to close out the film? Or do you want to set up the big parade that she goes through and we curtain call all the characters? And he's like, yes to both. It's like, well, no, generally you choose one or the other. And he's like, yes to both. All right, bro, we'll do both.
Yep. That's the Ed McMahon School of Filmmaking. You are correct.
And it does speak to a point, which again, as I sit here and analyze, what didn't work for me about this film. I know a lot of people do like this film. It has a pretty good reputation. You obviously liked it. I respect your opinion on these matters, but it does sort of feel at times like it was a movie by committee, right? Where it's we sit down and it's okay, we got to have the big thing at the end where she marches through the streets and everybody sees her. And we got to have the big speech at the end where she gets up and she delivers a thing and she goes into here, right? And we got to have the thing up front where she gets beaten so we sympathize with her the whole time. But we also can't show her being a bad, and so, oh, by the way, 5 musical sequences. See where you can fit them in. Go. And so, it really just felt like they sort of reverse engineered this and were like, I am going to put all of these things in my movie. And even if tonally or otherwise, the film is telling me that I should not do this, I'm going to push back and say, screw you, film. We're doing this whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
You hear that all the time, right? Like the film told, as a creator, right? The film told me I couldn't do this. The book told me whatever, right? Really wanted to do this, but just couldn't get it to work in the context of everything else, so I had to remove it. This is where the phrase, by the way, if you've ever heard this, and to anybody listening who may have heard this phrase and doesn't know what it refers to, that's where the phrase kill your darlings comes into play.
Yes.
Okay. And that is that, look, you can't necessarily make all this stuff work in this particular format. You're going to have to kill your darlings and take some of those ideas you love and save them for later. But here's the cool thing. Guess what? Next time, instead of being stuck and having writer's block, you're going to have a couple ideas to work with to get you going, But to sit there and say no, we're going to take all these things and make sure that they're in this film. I feel like there was no editing. They were just like, nope, don't care. Make it work, bro.
I respect that. I will say that I really enjoyed the music in this film. I thought it was beautiful. Sure. Even if it was ill-placed at times.
Yeah.
I thought the dance sequences were phenomenal.
Okay.
The music was scored by Sanchit and Ankit Balhara, if I'm saying that correctly. And the score was wonderful. I thought it swelled when it needed to. That opening dance sequence you're talking about that felt out of place was supposed to feel out of place because we're going from the red light district of Mumbai back to a simpler time when she was a young girl of 16, I believe, before she was sold into sex slavery, Gangubai meaning. And, so she's with her family who are very astute. Her father was, I believe, in politics or in accounting in politics or something like that. So he was a man of well stature. And so everyone was well educated and they were celebrating a holiday there, an Indian holiday. And so, dancing in the streets and all of that was all a part of it. And so we're seeing them celebrate. It was meant to be jarring. I think it was meant to be a palate cleanser. We're stepping out of that red light district because we had to show what was stripped away from Gangubai, or Ganga at the time. I guess by the way, is a respectful suffix given to women in India. So that's why she transitioned from Gangu to Gangubai, because that's when she took control. Vijay Raz, if I'm saying their name correctly, was Raja in this film, her competitor for the to become leader of this area. And he was, they were Raja or Rajabai, because at that time they were the, was it the mayor of that area that she was running for, or governor or something like that?
Yeah, it's like the city state, the leader of the city state, whatever the exact title
So at the time it was Rajabai, and then they got demoted to just Raja. And so, and then Ganga took Gangubai because then she became a woman of respect in that area. So, that was something I had to kind of do a little research on what the significance of the bai was. But anyways, I thought that their performance was fantastic. I thought thought performances across the board were fantastic. Siwa Prawa, who is the madam of the brothel.
I think she was the most interesting character. Like
fantastic.
I said, it was the one
I guess she's a very well-known thespian. She brings a lot of clout to this role. She's very well respected and educated in performance art and stuff like that. So you could look at her as almost like a Shakespearean actress, or in her field, if you want to think of it that way. So some of these things fall flat on me because I don't know. So when she shows up, an Indian audience could see that and be like, "Oh, holy shit!" There's Siwa Prawa, but I don't know that. So
correct.
Anyways.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that too with the leads in RRR, the fact that they were such huge action stars, gave some of those more emotional moments that much added depth, right? Just because of their reputation and how that plays against that. So,
dude, I want to ask you real quick. How about those fucking oneers that they had, those Steadicam shots for those two dance sequences, the opening one and then the middle one, where Gangubai has that emotional meltdown in the middle of it. The cinematography for that was sick. Just following around, I felt like I was dancing with her. Like, it was amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. For whatever reason, the dance sequences in this one didn't really do it for me as much as I wanted them to. I think maybe it was just because I was kind of like not as invested. I did like the opening sequence for what you've said, because it's going to set up like, it's providing a contrast. We need to see what she has so that when it's ripped away, that lends itself to that. But again, I was just sort of fundamentally not into the idea of dance sequences in this, right? Like,
sure,
it's like, I don't want to say that it's like, I don't think any disrespect was intended at all by any means, but it almost feels borderline like, why are you singing and dancing when we're talking about child sex slavery?
It would be like a dance sequence breaking out in the middle of Requiem for a Dream or something like that. Like,
I know I keep coming back to the same thing, but when you're asking me, it's like, and I think about it, it's like, okay, why did Ryan appreciate this, but I couldn't? And I think about it, it's like, oh yeah, I think because again, I was just like, fundamentally, I don't think this belongs here. There's a time and place for singing and dancing and talking about child sex slavery rings. It's not the time. So and I think, again, so I think because of that, I couldn't appreciate
two main dance sequences. One was to
the early one made sense though. The first
show the contrast, and then the second one was showcasing that these impoverished prostitutes were able to celebrate this I guess this holiday or whatever that's normally reserved for more affluent people. So it's my understanding that they were not allowed to do that. And so when they went out into this, again, culturally, some of this is going to get lost on us, unfortunately.
Of
but
course,
it's my understanding that was a big turn because they had gotten their independence. She is now the leader, and she's saying, you guys can be like the affluent people now. You guys can go out in the streets and have this celebration too. And again, that scene tethers directly to that opening scene because she has not gotten to be that person in that many years and had to go through this transformation to come full circle back to a person that got to celebrate like that. And, this is her new family that she's out in the streets dancing with. And then as she's going along, she had just had that phone call with her mother that she was disregarded, didn't want to speak to her. And so she brought that baggage out into the streets and she was trying to let it go. And then she was starting to have that meltdown. And that's when she was grabbing all I assume they're flowers of some kind and throwing them up in the air very aggressively, lost her shit and then bailed because, it was a very emotional thing that she's dealing with this PTSD or trauma, and it made her remember what she had lost. It brought her back to that place. So I understand why they're there. I'm not going to say, if it didn't work for you, it didn't work for you, but I do understand the mentality of why, he tried to do it, and bring those things in, because I do think those two scenes are kind of like counterweights of her journey of sorts. Sure. And then she goes on to meet the prime minister and all of that. And she kind of grows out of that and is able to deal with the trauma and become strength. But it doesn't change the fact that, again, this whole thing, what I'm explaining and why this worked for me is only justified by the Disneyfication and whitewashing of this character. It doesn't change the fact that it's a flawed story from the start. The way the story is told, I understand why these things are all there, and it worked for me on that level, but I don't think it holds true to the story it could have been, and maybe we both wanted from it. So it's a kind of a dichotomy there. I see both sides, I guess. Yeah. And so let me ask you something real quick on this very topic. Do you think that, because some criticisms out there, not in her performance, but in her casting, do you think there was a problem with casting Alia Bhatt in this role, in that she looks so tender and innocent? And so it's hard to see her as a crime boss. And let me give you an example. It would be like, picture if they cast Tom Hanks in Goodfellas, instead of Joe Pesci. And then all of a sudden it's like, instead of, I'm a clown, Joe Pesci's all, tough little Italian guy, scrappy or whatever. And then all of a sudden you got Tom Hanks like, and bopping around. You're going to see that movie differently. Does that make Tom Hanks a bad actor? Does that mean he's going to give a bad performance? Hell no. More literally, I just thought of one. Because we just talked about another film he was in that may or may not release before or after this. I don't know. But but what about Johnny Depp and Blow? Same type deal where they kind of, a totally bad dude that was into drug trafficking and breaking the law. But because it's like fun, freewheeling, full of moxie Johnny Depp, you're just along for this fun ride. And they're playing all these old 70s songs, the Rolling Stones, Gimme Shelter, or whatever is going on. And so you're like, yeah, fun, drug deals, instead of like, this is a flawed, dark story, of a bad person that did some bad things, left his family, went to prison. His daughter grew up without him. It's a dark tale that ends dark, but it's told through this very, whitewashing of just like fun. We're selling some drugs. Then, you leave that movie Blow wanting to go sell some drugs. It looks like a fun thing to do, to go be a crime boss. Do you think then Alia Bhatt's casting do you think she was miscast for this? Would you have liked to have seen a more serious, darker actress maybe do something like this?
No. Honestly, I thought she was great, dude. She was one of the, so I was going to say, like, I know,
but she was
I
great in this telling of the story, but the telling that you wanted, do you think that she could have done that?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Because, I was going to say, like, I know I've sort of taken the, against in this little debate here, but like, I didn't hate this movie by any means. Like there were absolutely things about the film that I liked. And a lot of them you mentioned, and I agree with it. And one of those is Alia Bhatt. I thought she crushed this performance. I thought her acting, and this is why I always differentiate between characterization and acting. Like the character of Gangubai, I had serious problems with. The way that character was explored, I had serious problems with. But the way that Alia Bhatt performed that character, she crushed it. She did both sides very well. She's grounded when she needs to be. She's fierce when she needs to be. She's emotional. She's sexy. She's dramatic. She is gorgeous, but also so is Charlize Theron. And she won an Oscar playing a serial killer.
Right.
You know, so like good actors, you know, I honestly, I would even say that's kind of disrespectful to actors to say that, you know, because actors are actors and they act and they can portray multiple people, the good ones. So, you know, I think any actor can play any role for the most part.
No, I don't agree with that. Not every actor can play every role.
No. Not every actor can play every role, but there are certain actors that can play pretty much any role and do a fine job with it.
I'll buy that.
So you have character actors where it's like they do one thing and they do it well, right?
Sure.
But then, you know, you have other people where they can play a number of different roles and they can do that well. So, you know, I don't think you can say they should or should not have been anyone else. And again, I thought she did a great job with this.
Okay.
I think
I do too, by the way. I was curious your take.
Yeah,
if that
you
would have
did mention
changed
that.
your. Okay. No, I mean, I definitely understand, dude. It was a tough question, and I was curious your take on it because again, I don't disagree with you at all. I think she ate. I think I like this movie a lot more than you do. It sounds like, but I do definitely do agree with you. I can't say every character can play every role, but I do think she was good for this telling of the story.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, to that point, I think that, again, it's not really that like the actor or actress did a great or bad job. Like maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But also we go back to, again, how were they portrayed? How were they set up for that success? Right.
Sure.
I'll point out another inconsistency that didn't work for me, which is that oftentimes the girls, like specifically like the prostitutes that work with her, like everyone is so beautiful and everybody is shot so glamorously, right? So it's like, again, you know, like it's supposed to be this gritty brothel or whatever, but there's this very sort of like emotional, romantic kind of mood lighting. And you'll notice that everybody's makeup is very perfect, right? It looks like it was all done very professionally. And so again, it's like you want me to think of this place as sort of grimy and gritty, but nothing about the way that you as a director are presenting it reinforces that. And so that's the issue that I had. So now you did mention, for example, the cinematography, and I thought that they did a good job of muting a lot of that, you know? So India is a very naturally colorful place. We know this. And yeah, to your point, you can literally tell that they had the color graders and color correctors like really bring down the highlights and the intensity on a lot of the background, so that, you know, the greens were muted and it had more of like a grayish look than it was like bright green, you know?
Right.
So they did, and that's what I'm talking about. Like that's a strong decision. You know, we wouldn't want a ton of color in, you know, when we're interviewing this young girl talking about how she'd rather die than be sold into sex slavery, right? Like it wouldn't make sense to have a huge color palette come through and be like, oh, look at that, you know? So there were times where it worked. And when those decisions were consistent and reflected one another, it worked for me. But then there would be so many other times where they would go against that. And so again, going back to what I said at the very top of this review, it's just the inconsistency that got to me, you know? I just, every single time it felt like it was kind of contradicting itself. And I just had a real hard time with that. So
I think my favorite character in the film that I would have liked to have seen more of and kind of seen.
We'll see if it's the same person.
A little bit of the clashing of it is Vijay Raj's Rajabai character.
Yeah.
Dude, they ate. I mean, just when they came behind Gangubai and said, I don't need a plate, and they just ate it out of her hands, I was like, oh, fuck, dude. Like, this is a Disney villain. And so... you know, I don't mean to offend anybody by dumbing it down like this, but I definitely saw a lot of Lion King in this film, just in the sense of like, because that character really struck me as like right. Just the way they would slink around and kind of almost like a snake, or
like, I know more than you do kind of thing. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, they left a lot on the table with that character. I don't really, they didn't really do anything, and maybe they just didn't. But again, if you're going to do historical fiction, which you kind of said they did at the top, like go ahead and make that person a delicious villain, as they like to say, right? Like just let them revel in,
or make
just,
them more
all of
dangerous.
that.
Like I would have liked to have seen that person kill some people or do some crime or whatever, like to kind of up the stakes a little bit to show what Gangubai was up against. It wasn't just, they treated it like a political election, like I'm going to get you. No, you won't. But that character was so fleshed out, and Raj was just going crazy with their performance that I wanted to see more of it, and really kind of up the stakes a little bit, up the ante, if you will, to see what Gangubai had to overcome to get that role. I think that would have really made that payoff of her winning the election feel that much more satisfactory in those moments. I think that was a very unsatisfactory victory for me throughout the film. It was great in her personal growth, coming out of that, the slums and stuff to kind of take over. It was a good chapter break, but man, how much more impact and weight would that have had if you saw the dangers that she was in, dealing with that and the criminal underworld and seediness of it. You did get that one guy that was very violent with her. So you did get these little, and that was the thing too, is like, so if you're going to anchor the movie in this dark way and then come out of it, and go on this whitewash Disneyfication story. Okay. But then it kept going back to the dark. So like she was like violently raped twice by that thug, which then, got her in, with the criminal, boss and stuff, played by, AJ Dev and all that. So, it was weird that we kept going back to that a little bit to kind of remind us of the dangers that she was in and having to overcome. It's like, man, let's stick with that then. That's a great tone to have, and kind of interlace that or interweave that in with the whole story. Can
I ask you real quick, by the way,
go ahead.
From a storyline perspective, the moment where Gangubai gets the film reels from Razi and shows them, do you understand what that was? Like what was she showing that took him down? Because she was like, her friend was like, oh, he's never going to survive this. Like, you got him by the balls. Or I'm not really sure exactly if it was. Also, that was a weird thing. Like, I don't know if the character was supposed to be transgender or if it was supposed to be a man posing as a woman because it's like a power thing. And like,
I thought it was a transgender. I've been referring to them as they throughout this show.
And that was kind of the point, is they didn't really flesh that out. It's like, what's the reason for that? Like, was it just the real person was that?
I agree.
It was just, it was a very, very underdeveloped character. Like, you could have just left that person entirely out of the story, and I don't think we would have lost anything. Which is unfortunate because I think it had potential. I think that character had liked potential. To have because it awesome.
This movie is like so close all the way across the board. It's like there's so much meat on the bone, but it's like just not quite cooked enough. So I still can find enough about this to give it a good rating. I really enjoyed this. It was an emotional turn. It was a good, well acted. Like I said, all the department heads crushed it. I just really would have liked to just take it a little further. I wouldn't have done away with that character at all. To answer your question, what she was showing, the purpose of that screening, in my understanding, was that it was providing a distraction because that
it was just to keep people from the speech.
Correct. She was going to go give this wonderful speech, and she told Gangubai, "You're fucked. I got you. The whole city's behind me. This is my town. You got nothing, kid." And then Gangubai's like, just put on a bunch of movies, got those reels.
Got it.
And
I thought
so
it was like
the whole town was watching that.
Movie.
Nobody came to her speech. And then that's when she strutted in, Gangubai did, to her little meeting and was like, put her feet up and was like, "Hey, so no one's here. I'm here. Let's see what you got. What's your speech, kid?"
Yeah.
And was like all cocky about it.
Yeah. I thought it was I thought it was like, oh, we have this embarrassing footage of this person from before. And like, it was going to be like a TMZ thing that like took him down, whatever that was. But so, I see now what you're saying. It was just to provide a distraction so people didn't go to his speech to embarrass him.
She won the court of public opinion, if you want to put it that way,
yeah.
in this whole thing. And because politics be politics, baby. I did think it was interesting, something we have learned on this show, namely from the great success of our RRR episode. Thank you everyone for watching, liking, commenting, etc. But our Indian audience, has shown such passion towards cinema, towards film, towards escapism, towards storytelling. And we're being introduced to this whole world of Bollywood and Tollywood films, etc. But it was interesting to see that was so prevalent even back then, that they've always had a love of cinema, even so much so that the centerpiece of their district was a series of theaters. I don't know if you noticed that, but there was a lot of cinemas. They were advertising the new talkies
too.
Yeah, and those were all real cinemas that they recreated, that were true to life. They found old photographs and that's a real district, I guess, in Mumbai that they, recreated. The set designers crushed and built that whole town square from scratch and made it very relevant to its time. So, I thought that it was very authentic and it felt really, really cool to go back to that.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap up our review here, sir. And as we do, we will go ahead and finish with our 3 adjectives feature. Before we do want to ask you guys watching and listening, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hopefully you left some comments along the way. If you haven't, not too late to do so right now. Ryan, go ahead and explain 3 adjectives to any new viewers and give us yours, sir.
Our 3 adjectives segment is basically just if you saw this film and were trying to describe it to a friend very quickly in just a couple words or a very brief phrase, what would you say? And some of these could be metaphors or analogies, just creative little witty banter to try to wrap this thing up in the best way possible and how we saw this movie. And I'll give you some examples. My first one is Stephen King. And what I mean by that is that any adaptation of Stephen King is not going to be authentic on film. You look at it and any fan of Stephen King or anybody that knows anything about a Stephen King book is going to debate you and say, yeah, but.
Sure, yeah.
So this was... but those Stephen King films without a novel being attached could still be fun movies. And this is that. This is not authentic. This is not good to the source material. It's tonally all over the place, but it's still a good movie, as Stephen King movies can be. My second one is Sumo Orange, because I don't know if you ever had a Sumo Orange, but they're subtly perfect. They're like the best fruit. And they're nothing special about it. They peel easily. There's no seeds. They're absolutely delicious. Technically, absolutely, subtly perfect. And this movie is technically subtly perfect. And my last one is Los Angeles Dodgers. Because win, lose, or draw, you're still going to have a good time watching the LA Dodgers. It's star-packed. You're going to get some good performances. You got a good stadium to play in. The weather's perfect. And this just had a lot of pieces that were fantastic. You could look at the Dodgers and be like, they stink, or I hate them, or blah, blah, blah. But if you're going to go watch a Dodgers game, you're going to have a good time. And I really enjoyed this movie for what it was. How about you, Jason?
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm going to go compliment sandwich with disappointment bread on this one. So we're going to start off with tonally inconsistent, but in that middle, we are going to have visually attractive. But then at the end, we have thematically juxtaposed. And like I said, dude, I've actually talked before about how, generally speaking, I find juxtaposition often very interesting because it is a combination of two things that we generally do not see together. But we've also used the analogy where it's like fusion food, when it works, but when it doesn't, it doesn't, right? And sometimes, the Korean and French, split actually works really well. But then you try to do some sort of, Polish Mexican thing and it just doesn't vibe at all. Right. So,
and sometimes it's subjective. Some people like an eggplant hamburger.
Exactly.
I personally don't want an eggplant cheeseburger, but some people might.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, every single movie that has ever been created under the sun is subjective. And, that's why, the adjectives and the star rating at the end are just to kind of wrap it up. Really, it's about explaining ourselves and why we didn't respond to something along the way, which we obviously have done very well over the last just under an hour over here. But we do know that the people like the star ratings and the formal ratings and the grade ratings and all that. So we still give it to you guys. We're going to go ahead and wrap up with our star rating. Out of 5 stars, I'm going to split this one down the middle, man. I'm going to give it 3 stars out of 5. Didn't
All
hate
right.
it, didn't love it. There was a lot to like from a technical standpoint and an acting standpoint. There was a lot not to like from a characterization standpoint. And so just again, plus minus, all evened out. I solid 3 out of 5 stars. Would have also considered maybe 3.5 if it didn't have to take 2 hours and 45 minutes of my life to tell its story. Like, I mean, I know I always give you shit for the long movies.
I was going to say, who does that sound like?
But there also was a thing too, where it's like, if you had gotten me in and out in 2 hours, like fine, but you made me stay an extra 45 minutes and it gave me time to think about
it could have been
some of
edited
these
a
other
little tighter.
things that I didn't like as much. So
yes.
3 out of 5. What you got, man?
I'm giving this one 4 stars.
Nice.
I think
Solid.
that's about the difference we thought there would be in this little star rating system. But I really enjoyed this. I would watch it again. I do understand every single thing you said and take that all into consideration. I don't necessarily disagree.
Yeah. So, some differing opinions here. To our audience, we would love to know what you guys think. Please drop a note in the comments. Let us know if you like this film. Do you agree with Ryan? Do you agree with me? And we can go back and forth, debate that a little bit. Also, be sure
and
to
let us know
Esoterica.
which Indian film to watch next. I would love to hear from our viewers. Like, we're loving this exploratory little journey that we're on, getting into these films and learning. So if you have any recommendations of films you'd like us to watch and discuss, definitely get in the comments and let us know.
Yeah, I know recently we've had Siddhar Udam and Iga pitched to us, which are both films that I'm looking forward to getting around to in time. But yeah, I would love to learn more from you guys, so drop us those comments. Also, be sure to visit esotericacinema.com. We've got more content there. You can reach out to us directly. In the meantime, I'm Jason Peters. He's Ryan Siebold. Thanks so much for joining us on Esoterica Cinema. Enjoy the movies.